Please be upstanding for the prayer. Almighty God, we who are gathered together in council pledge ourselves to work in harmony for the welfare and development of our rural city. Guide us, we pray, in our deliberations. Help us to be fair in our judgment and wise in our actions, so that prosperity and happiness shall be the lot of our people. Amen. Acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land which now comprises the Mildura Rural City Municipality. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and celebrate and respect their continuing cultures and acknowledge the memories of their ancestors. Good evening and welcome to February Ordinary Meeting of Council this Thursday, 24th of February 2022. I welcome councillors, management and staff. I also welcome those members of the public viewing the live stream online or watching this recording at a later time. In accordance with the directions of Victorians to wear masks indoors, all those present tonight will be wearing a mask unless a medical exemption has been provided. When addressing the meeting, the speaker may choose to take off their mask in order to be clearly heard and understood. This meeting is being live streamed on Council's website. The meeting recording will be published on Council's website within 48 hours of this meeting concluding. Tonight at item 17, we'll be considering a confidential report. The live stream will conclude once Council resolves to move into confidential business. This aspect of the recording will not be made available on our website. Thank you. Just a quick one before we start. We're going to try a few different things as we evolve as councillors. So I'll be asking the councillors to become more involved and the staff, supporting staff, to be less involved. It's our meeting to inform our community, so I would like for us to take a little bit more control. So we'll take the training wheels off and see how we go. Also, with debate within the meeting, obviously always respect each other. If there is a point of order along the way, can we please be silent until that is dealt with, and then we'll move on. Thank you. So tonight we have present Deputy Mayor Cindy Power, Councillor Ian Arney, Councillor Jason Modica, Councillor Mark Eckel, Councillor Helen Healy, Councillor Glenn Milne, Councillor Jody Reynolds, Councillor Stefano Di Pieri, Acting CEO Martin Hawson, Acting General Manager Community Mark Jenkins, General Manager Development Mandy Whelan, Manager of Governance and Performance Lani Baird, and beaming in virtually is General Manager Corporate Chris Parham. Moving on to item 4, apologies and absences. There are no apologies for this evening's meeting. Item 5, confirmation of minutes. We have the following minutes to be confirmed tonight. Ordinary and confidential minutes for the meeting held on 27th of January 2022. Planning Delegated Committee meeting minutes from the meeting held on 10th of February 2022, and special confidential minutes for the meeting held on 16th of February 2022. Do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Modica. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Power. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone wants to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. The motion is carried. Item 6, confirmation of council auspice meetings. We have records from 2 council auspice meetings to note tonight. There are from the following meetings: Planning Forum, 7th of February 2022, and Council Forum, 10th of February 2022. Do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Di Pieri. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. The motion is carried. 7, notification of absence. Would any councillors like to notify council of upcoming absences? No. Number 8, Mayoral Report. 8.1 Mayoral Report, January 2022. Recommendation: the council note the contents of this report. Do I have a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor Power. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Milne. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. The motion is carried. Item 9, council reports. 9.1, council reports, January 2022. I invite any councillors who would like to speak to their report to raise their hand. Councillor Healy, Councillor Milne, Councillor Arney, Councillor Modica. I will now get Councillor Healy to start off with.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Just in reference to my report last month and in recent days, I've spent quite a bit of time with the Mildura Surf Lifesaving Club, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to tell other councillors and our public what an amazing facility this is out there. Only a few years ago, the Mildura Surf Lifesaving Club, which is the only inland surf lifing club in Australia, had a very small number of members, under 10. Now they have 150 financial members. They have 76 first-time members this year, 27 patrolling members who have currently volunteered 842 hours this summer with 13 patrols to go. I met a young woman last weekend who'd done 100 hours while I was there. I was there for an hour and her 100 hours ticked over, a 17-year-old. And it's a huge achievement for a club who only had several active members a few years ago. Recently, over summer, this Surf Lifesaving Club avoided Mildura having 5 deaths on the front page of national newspapers. One of the captain of the club, they were just packing up and there was only one family on the beach. The whole family went in, twin 6-year-olds, a 10-year-old and mum and dad, and they all got into trouble when they stepped off the shelf. The captain went in and went underwater and held up the 2 6-year-olds. Had 2 young patrollers with him who ran to get boards, came out, picked up the 10-year-old and put the 6-year-olds on the board, took the adults in, the other guys took the adults in. And that was the very same weekend that Echuca had a drowning and they don't have an inland surf lifesaving club. So what I urge us all to do is to become familiar with the club, but more importantly, when they put their hand up for help because their facility is no longer fit for purpose, I would like us to be able to help them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to report on my adventurous day or day of adventure going to Underbill for the Australia Day event. I went through a windstorm, a rainstorm, then a dust storm, then another rainstorm, to the point where you couldn't actually see the road, and I almost stopped at Oyen because I couldn't see more than about 30 feet in front of me. Only to get out to Underbill and the sun was shining. It was all beautiful. I hadn't had a drop of rain. And there was a great day out there, good crowd. I left there, came back and went through nearly the same thing on the way back. So our municipality is a very interesting place. When you drive a couple of 100 kilometres, you can go through anything. You know, when I got back to Mildura, there was another dust storm and then there was rain again. So an adventurous day, but a great time held out at Underbill around the swimming pool. The other couple of things I'd like to mention is I had a meeting with some of the people that live in Mildura East about concerns with that growth area, which there'll be a question coming up about trying to get some more time for them to respond because they're farmers and it's picking time. And also a meeting with the Ash Avenue people where the anomalies or peculiarities or frustrations or whatever with the Mildura Old Irrigated area actually come into play, where a family wanted to build a house on a bitumen road, but because of the restrictions of the MOIA document, they had to build it on a dirt road. And now there's not many families living on the dirt road, and hence there's a problem. And again, there's a question coming up about what we can do about the MOIA, because it really does constrict growers, and there's some genuine growers out there that end up in real difficulty because of the restrictions that are around that. And that's it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Arnie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to take this mask off. I'd just like to mention that earlier this month, I came up with 24 questions that I put to the CEO and staff. And I was really pleased by the quick response, particularly with regards to some issues that needed attending very quickly. And I guess the main reason for speaking to this is I'd like the questions and responses recorded as part of the minutes from this meeting. But I also urge anyone who's interested in what we do at Council to take note that councillors do, in fact, actually look at a lot of small things that affect everyday people. They don't just look at the big ticket items. We try and cover a huge number of different issues, and this is just another example of the very little things that affect everyday people that involves all of us, and we spend a lot of time on it. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Arnie, and we implore all local community members to jump on SnapSend Solve app to solve some issues that they see around the town. So thank you. Councillor Pierre, you need to be...
Mayor, if you indulge me, I've been remiss in writing up my report, so I don't want to go down as on the records as a councillor that does nothing. So will allow me to rectify a few things. Now, just briefly, I've been working with the Task Force on Employment, the State and Commonwealth Task Force, which includes people from Mildura and around the Wimmera Mallee. We are looking at very effective ways of training people, particularly in the areas where there's a shortage of staff. That's one. I have been quietly consulting with the state architects over, not so much, that's not my remit, it might be our remit one day, where the new hospital might be, but it's about what kind of institution we want to have, what will inform a new hospital. It's a very complex and very exciting conversation because it's not a place where you go to just get a few stitches or whatever. A hospital today has to be a very organic and interesting way. It has to develop ways of interacting at the health level with the community. So it's very comforting to hear there's some formidable and high quality conversations going on in that corner. And I'm sure that it won't be long before some announcements are made, of which I'm not privy. I've just been part of the conversation. It was also very interesting to partake, like Councillor Modica and others, at a meeting with our esteemed colleague Reynolds, Councillor Reynolds, in relation to the continuing work from Naya Forest to the South Australian border to organise proper and scientific approaches to the flood plain. I don't think that issue is yet sunken into the community mind because we're still at the level of lots of reports and more reports as is proper, but the impact of that would be phenomenal. And yes, the state and Commonwealth investment is just phenomenal. And, we're talking millions upon millions, and cross fingers that everything will continue to go ahead. And on the other matter of, which seems esoteric, but it's not, Councillor Healy and I have had meetings with, began to have meetings properly with the Advisory Board Council, the Culture and Arts Advisory Board. It's still a little bit in embryonic, and we are looking at how to make that tool a good organism to advise council on ongoing matters which have tourist implication and therefore economic implications. And I think we are developing in this institution a very good sense of what could be possible in the future once we put to bed existing projects, about which there's obviously lots of good news, and as we hopefully will see in the media in the next few days. Thank you. I promise you that I'll send it all in writing next time.
That's all right. Thank you, Councillor De Pieri, and hopefully the government's not only listening but going to act on the hospital. Councillor Monica.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wood. Just to comment on Councillor De Pieri, the Victorian Murray Floodplain Restoration Project is a $330 million spend, as you said, from Naya through to the South Australian border. It is an absolute boon for the region, and parts of the river system will see water that haven't seen it for 25 or 30 years, maybe longer. So it's a great result. So the two things that I wanted to talk about is I've taken over the environment portfolio this year, and we've had 3 meetings actually with the Climate Emergency Community Advisory Group, which is out at the moment to look for 3 new members. This is a real material result of this council calling a climate emergency and trying to deal with the issues of an ongoing changing climate. And one of the things that was brought to my attention, and it's quite relevant, is that researchers at the Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy in Germany have developed a process that uses 100% recycled silicon for photovoltaic models to produce new PERC solar cells. So there's a great opportunity in our future to work towards considering that, particularly with the volume of large solar farms we have here. So there are answers to big questions, and that technology will come along. The other one that I wanted to talk about was the environment portfolio again. We passed our tree planting policy last month, which was fantastic. Thank the staff for all this work. But in 2021, the tree planting season, there was 1,840 trees planted, with 50 that were removed, with a net gain of 1,790. Most are native species, but in some instances we honour the trees that are already in place. So some really good results there. Thank you very much, Mayor Wood.
Thank you, Councillor Monica. And there's no one else that wanted to speak to the reports. Councillor Eccles.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I thought I'd jump in. I feel a bit guilty after Councillor Stefano said you'll talk to report. I noticed that the CMA and they did a report to the Psychic Bend Historical Reserve Committee, and as you know, Mr Mayor, I'm appointed by the Minister to chair that group. That they've got $765,000 grant to enhance the tracks and from Psychic Bend up through the area where the middens are, fabulous area there around the middens and further up. So the issue that I have is that, and I made my feelings felt, and they're going to come to me with a report, is that councils spent considerable money over the years on tracks and trails in our municipality along the riverfront. We're also at the moment talking to a group as we have for the last year and a half about the Horseshoe Bend and a little bit of a part of the track that is unresolved at the moment that will join us up permanently from Merbeen right through to Kings Billabong. But whilst all that's been done, and before that all the money is spent on Merbeen Common, still the Pumps Road has not 1 cent out of that. And the Pumps Road leads to all those parks and tracks, and also on our committee we have the Victoria Parks Victoria, and they are doing substantial work in between Bruce's Bend and Psyche Bend as well, and yet we can't do anything. But DELP is the area that was the government body that handles that, and so you'll hear further, Mr Mayor. The CMA are kindly enough, and this is no disparity on the CMA, they're doing a fantastic job, and they can only do what the grant provides them to do. So they are going to come back to me with a report, and I'll certainly bring that through council once again, and to the local member, Ali Capital, once again, go to the government and say, look, what the heck's going on here? And you've got a main arterial road that's only, 2 kilometres, a little bit over 2 kilometres, and we can't get anything done for it. So that's something that I'd like to flag for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Eccles. I'll now put the motion to vote. Do I have a mover? Councillor Modica. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Healy. Does anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. The motion is carried. Item 10, responses to councillor questions. The next item of business is responses to councillor questions. Councillor Arnie, are you happy with the response you received to your question about insight into new land tax?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Modica, are you happy with the response you received to your question about infographic about ratepayers' money?
Yes, mate, I am. Thank you.
And Councillor Eckel, are you happy with the response you received to your question about Mildura tourism signage?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I've got a further question coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now carry on to item 11, questions from councillors. Councillor Milne, Councillor Eckel, Councillor Modica, Councillor De Pieri. Okay, I'll start off with Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is, can Council extend the comment time for the Mildura East Growth Area Strategic Framework, given the comment period has fallen in the middle of harvest and those most affected are extremely busy and unable to commit the time required to comment within the current time frame?
Thank you. The exhibition period for this framework is 6 weeks. However, Council can consider late submissions in any other situation, and should they contact Council directly to make arrangements.
Okay, I'll pass that on to the affected persons that have been speaking to me.
Yeah, get them to pull through, yep.
Yep. When can the residents of Ash Avenue expect to have their road sealed? And can we as a council seek funding from the state government to assist with the sealing, given the dust is a problem for table grape growers who have farms on this road?
As per the council resolution on the 27th of January 2021, moved by Councillor Arnie and seconded by Councillor Glenn Milne, our position remains the same: to undertake inspection and maintenance works as per the road management plan and investigate funding options in context with the other priority roads within the municipality.
So have we done any of that? Are we investigating the funding?
Yes, we are, and also the people at Ash Avenue have been in constant contact about the situation over 7 times since that resolution was put forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we seek a review of the MOIA incorporated document and zone restrictions, given the major changes in horticulture since this document was put in place? And on the same subject, where is the mapping of the 160 small allotments sought by the Minister for Planning at? And can the mapping be finished as a matter of urgency to allow the Minister to make any changes required to the MOI document?
I'll pass this on to Acting General Manager of Community, Mark Jenkins.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As response to the first part of the question, Council's made several attempts, as you probably be aware, to change the MOIA, probably over the last 12 years. And each attempt has taken a significant amount of work to actually prepare and provide evidence to make the change. And we have been largely unsuccessful, except for the most recent attempt. So any future attempt to alter the MOIA would need to have some sort of different criteria put forward or some different story. I think we could fairly say we've tried most angles in terms of the changes to the incorporated document. But to sort of move to your second question, our last attempt, we did manage to claw back some and allowances for properties in a certain size range in the MOIA, and that resulted in probably a small amount of lots being eligible. So what we have done, we have embarked on a piece of work to determine how many of those lots are eligible. I think originally it was in we thought might be around the 150 mark. It's a lot lower than that, and we're in the process of doing that. So we made an assessment initially on the numbers that are very, very obvious, and then we're doing a detailed work now on the lots that have more question marks around them, around 173 agreements and the location and size of those lots. So that work should be complete in the next couple of weeks. So we are actually doing a project to do that piece of work, and I can check in today and it's almost complete.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I think that'll be good news for all those affected, so thank you. I would also like Council to write to the State Government expressing our concern with the move to shed 145 of the most senior and experienced agricultural staff from Agriculture Victoria. Given Victoria is Australia's largest producer of food and fibre products, I'd remind our council that we've lost the research facilities at Merbeen and Walpeup, and there's been cutbacks in research and other facilities when there should have been increases given the impact of climate change on our region.
I'll also pass that on to General Manager of Community, Mark Jenkins.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we'll do some investigation around that matter, and we can provide a letter back to the government about our concerns.
Thanks very much for that. Next question is Ballarat City Council is looking to introduce a 6-month trial of subsidised cloth nappies, given the impact of disposable nappies on landfill. Understanding that we've already explored the cloth nappy issue as unworkable or unaffordable, can we have this matter discussed at the forum with the intent of developing a sustainable, practical and acceptable nappy option? And to explain that, I'd like Council to approach the State Government with a request for research funding for industry, which could come from the landfill levy, to be provided to develop a better, faster breaking down disposable nappy.
As you said, Council considered this at the September 2021 Council meeting and resolved to undertake an education program to encourage the use of reusable nappies, given the research did not support the introduction of subsidisation program. Council can approach the State Government with the outlined request, and we'll monitor the trial from Ballarat. And I'll also just get some information, if I can, from Councillor Healy about the initial undertaking that we took as council in Mildura.
Okay, sure. And also Councillor Power was also in December last year asked questions in relation to this as well. The staff did some good research, and in response to Councillor Milner, I'd happily watch the trial in Ballarat, and I certainly agree with you that we do need to investigate ways to actually avoid disposable nappies. Cardinia Shire did a trial last year, and they decided afterwards that it was quite fraught with a whole lot of issues, including people actually claiming the rebate and then selling the nappies online, and a few kind of things that went wrong with it, and decided they wouldn't do it again, that it was not a good idea. I also canvassed late last year the 8 people who directly contacted me to actually get some indication of how many people locally, because I know we have about, is it 3,000 new babies a year, something like that, or under 4, and they didn't get a lot of traction with people saying they wanted to take it up. So I think that, yes, let's watch Ballarat very closely. And secondly, I think it would be a really good idea to urge the government to look into this, because currently in the life of a child, a disposable nappies will cost about $3,000 and cloth will cost about $1,000, but that's quite a different ballgame, keeping them clean and reusable. Thank you.
Just quickly, Deputy Mayor Powell, would you like to add anything to that? Besides, it's 900 babies, not 3,000.
Yeah, it's about 900 to 1,000, depending on the year. So thank you. Yeah. Oh, that would be amazing. No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be amazing. And yeah, I absolutely concur with what Councillor Healy has just said. It was interesting reading about going back to this memo back from September in Cardinia Shire. There were issues with even wondering, do people even use them after they've started? You know, how long did they continue using the cloth nappies? So no, I absolutely, I support what you've said, Councillor Milne, and I agree with what you've said, Councillor Healy. Thank you very much. Nothing else to add.
Yeah. Thanks,
Councillor
Mr Mayor.
Can I just add something to that? Thank you for
Councillor
the
Eccles.
discussion. Yeah, it was just interesting today on the television that, and I didn't catch up on the Shire or the municipality, but with the childbirth rate increase of late, it'll be interesting to see what the stats are too, to keep up with that, because one of the shires that they talked about today was a threefold increase on the previous year of births at their hospital.
Yeah, that's right. A few people staying at home, Councillor Milne.
A few people staying at home, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a worldwide problem, and that's why I raised it. It's not just Australia.
Well, hopefully Ballarat can iron out some kinks.
And yeah, nappies take 150 years to break down, so we should be able to do a bit better than that. The state government has recently hit Melbourne and some regional Ballarat, Bendigo and Geelong developers with a $20,000 per allotment tax to fund social housing. And that was a question that I sent in. I think that's covered in one of the council motions.
14.5. Yep.
So I think I can leave, well, actually, I think they've withdrawn it anyway, so I'll leave that one go. My seventh question is, when will a report on drainage and flooding problems from the recent downpour be presented to council, and is there a plan being prepared to rectify the major problem areas?
As advised on the forum held on February 10th, a report on the initial impacts was provided to councillors, and a further report will be coming to the March forum.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Eccles.
Mr Mayor, I seek your indulgence for these two questions.
Without sounds notice. Dangerous.
Yeah, no, they're not, and that's why I'm bringing them up. I received 2 emails today, and I'd like to jump on them before another month goes by. But one of them is further to that Mildura tourage signage that I'm pleased that we're doing that, getting that underway, the audit. But there's an email that came through today from Bernadette Wells. Mark Jenkins would be aware of that when he gets to his emails. It was a late email. And I'd just like to raise the issue because it's an important one, and that's the signage at the International Drive as you go to the Merbein Lookout. There's nothing that points to the presence of the Blandowski stairs and walk, and I think if we can put that in that audit to have a look at that, I'd appreciate that. And Bernadette's got some terrific other suggestions of what's occurring down there in Blandowski Walk as well. So that's one, Mr Mayor. I don't need an answer for that. The other is that, as you would expect, I'm receiving inquiries from sporting clubs to have preliminary discussions about the possibility of hosting an event at the upcoming 2026 Commonwealth Games. I received an email this afternoon from one such club, Sport, and they, what I would like is from management to provide councillors with a simple pro forma that details the prelim process, which will go on to detail the necessary path for any expression of interest from here through, and that councillors can provide to the club or organisation that display the said interest. And one more. I don't need answers. It's all right.
Well, this is question time, Mark,
yeah, okay.
Councillor Eccles.
Right,
so we'll pass it on to Acting CEO Martin Hawson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think it's best if when Councillor Eccles receives the emails, just to pass them on to the staff, and we'll deal with them. It is actually quite a complex process, obviously the provision and the application process, and we're very much in early days. So the best way to do it is ask them to forward their information directly to us, whether that's through our recreation department or directly to senior management, and we'll deal with them as they come in. Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've already teed up the meeting for next week, Mr Hawson, so that's okay. But if you can give me some sort of detail in regards to that issue, that'd be good. I think they'll come to councillors first, and that's okay to pass it on. But I think we should be participating in some sort of discussion with them and know what the process is. But it needs to be in printed form. That's all I'm saying, Mr. Mayor. And I think that's reasonable. And the other thing I just like to bring to the community's notice that applications closed on the 10th of March for the Sport and Recreation Gender Equity Officer part-time temporary. And I think that if that word can be spread around, I think it's a fabulous initiative, and we'd like to get that out there.
Okay, but we are in question time, Councillor Eckel.
Yeah, well, I'm asking that...
You're asking us for us to spread it around.
Promoted more.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Monica.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Look, I've just got a couple. I've been reading through the ELGA pre-budget submissions 2022-2023, and priority one is an immediate injection of financial assistance grants and with a commitment sought, and I've got a preamble there, but I'll send it around to councillors later on, and it's a $1.3 billion support to communities for jobs and bringing forward the quarterly financial assistance grant payments each year. It's a $1.928 billion contribution with heaps of 13,000 jobs coming out of it. So this is, as I said, something that I'll send around. But the question is, could MRCC support ELGA's pre-budget paper 22-23 with attention on how it would fit within the local needs of our community? Could we write to the PM and the Treasurer and our local state and federal members requesting that this initiative is lobbied for and hopefully implemented for the benefit of all LGAs and local communities building back from COVID?
Yes, we're happy to support that.
Thank you very much. And as I said, I'll send it around, and I would encourage any community members interested in the way funding works within the three tiers of government. It's quite fascinating if you're into that sort of stuff. And the second one is, I can find it. Can MRCC write to the New South Wales Premier, Water and Environment Minister requesting assurance that recent issuing of licences in the Northern Basin are in accordance with the Commonwealth Water Act and the recommendations of the New South Wales Parliamentary Inquiry into Floodplain Harvesting and within the existing 64 gigalitre cap for the Northern Basin?
Acting General Manager Community, Mark Jenkins.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that should be possible. And we'll investigate the issue and then write a letter back to the government.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
I'll now pass on to Councillor De Pieri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council obviously provides a lot of services, and the members of the community are always engaging with issues around it and come to us via councillors or directly with responses about various issues. So my question is, can we have officers outline the best way and the most efficient way for our community members to get answers to their services-related questions? Can we also have an indication of the time it takes to respond via the councillor's question time process, which is what we've done tonight, as opposed to contacting the organisation directly? Thank you.
Acting CEO Martin Hawson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question. Your question's quite timely, Councillor De Pieri, because we're in the midst of developing our customer experience framework, and you would have noticed that it's out for public consultation at the moment. So there's a really good opportunity for the community to feed back into that process, but also we'll compile the data in relation to those processes that you're alluding to. We have been collecting that data over some time, so we'll certainly be able to provide that back to councillors for their information.
Is that all, Councillor De Pieri? Okay. Thanks everyone for the questions, and thanks for getting them in a few days beforehand. It's always really important, I think, not only to ask the questions, but to get the answers for our community. So thank you. I'll pass on now to item 12, notice of motion. The next item of business is notice of motion, of which there are none. Item 13, petitions, joint letters and deputations. There are also no petitions, joint letters or deputations tonight. Item 14, management reports. We will now move on to considering the management reports. 14.1, councillor expense report, October 2021 to 31st December 2021. The council note the contents of this report, which details councillor expenses for the period 1st of October 2021 to the 31st of December 2021. Do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Healy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Modica. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. The motion is carried. Item 14.2, adoption of Mildura CBD access and mobility strategy. Thank you, councillors. Given both myself and the Deputy Mayor have declared a conflict of interest, we need to elect an acting chair for this item.
I'm happy to nominate Councillor Milne.
Councillor Milne. Just on that, do we have any more?
I have a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
My partner, Danielle Hobbs, is the manager of Mildura City Heart.
And is it it's a material? Yep. Deputy Mayor Power.
Sorry, yes, my conflict of interest is material as well, as I own a business in the CBD. Thank you.
Seek your guidance, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm in the same.
Yes. Yes, you own a business in the CBD, so I think so too. And obviously myself, and this is, in dealing with this situation, obviously it's happened a couple of times because there are a few of us involved in the CBD. So we'll now move on, as I said, to put in the nominations for councillors to be elected and acting for this item. And Councillor Eccles has nominated Councillor Milne. Councillor Milne, do you accept this? Yep. Do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Arnie. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Okay, now put the motion to vote. The motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Milne. I ask you to take the chair and I'll leave the room for this item.
Okay. Can we get that door shut, please? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Item 14.2 is the adoption of the Mildura CBD access and mobility strategy, with the recommendation that Council 1 approve and adopt the draft Mildura CBD access and mobility strategy as presented, that has been amended in accordance with the response to submission summary table, and 2, write to the Minister for Transport and Public Transport respectively to draw their attention to the priority recommendations in the strategy, including the required urgent funding of a Mildura freight link along Benetook Avenue and other priority actions to support active transit, including protected bike lanes and safer roundabouts as detailed in the strategy. Do I have
Councillor
a mover
Milne?
for that motion?
I'd like to propose an amended motion, please.
Well, I need a mover for the motion in the first place. Oh, no, I'll take the amendment at the start.
Thank you. I'm happy to move this recommendation with the following additional dot points. That council conduct a trial of 30 km/h speed limit in existing roadways comprising Langtree Avenue, Lime Avenue and Pine Avenue between 7th Street and 10th Street, and 8th Street, 9th Street and 10th Street between Deakin Avenue and Pine Avenue. Dot point 2, based on the outcomes of the trial, prepare a detailed plan for the introduction of reduced speed limits in Mildura CBD for approval by council.
So That's an amendment. Are they 2 more points? Is that point 3 and point 4? Can I seek some advice as to whether that will conflict with the rest of the recommendation and the report? No. Okay. Okay, we've got an amended motion. Would somebody like to move that motion? Councillor Healy's moved. Sorry, seconder. Councillor Reynolds. Thank you. I will be speaking against the motion. Does anyone else want to speak against the motion? Yeah.
Just with regard to that point, with the amended motion.
That becomes the motion.
With the amended motion, that becomes the motion. There will be things that would have to change in the report to align with that motion, and that if this is successful, then we would make that as a matter of course, because it does change elements of the report, but that would only happen if this this particular motion gets up. So just for a point of clarification for councillors.
Does anyone else want to speak against the motion? Just so I know.
I'd actually like some clarification, please.
Yes, Councillor Arnie, yeah.
With regards to the trial of 30 kilometres, how is that proposed to take place? And if it's deemed successful, and by whom would it be deemed successful? Would it then be applied as the speed limit, or would it come back to council? How will it actually work, please?
Mr Acting CEO, I'll ask you to give an answer.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll have a go first, but I may well hand that off to General Manager Jenkins. As per the resolution that Councillor Healy has proposed, as I heard it, the idea is to conduct a trial and then investigate the success or seek feedback on the trial as per what we would normally do in an evaluation process, and then come back to council for the endorsement of that that process. So that would be a separate process. In regard to how it would be done, basically the speed signs that are, I think they're existing 40k signs there at the moment, they would be changed to 30k's, and we would see how we go. And then we'd monitor that process over a period of 12 months and then seek feedback on that. And I'm getting a nod from Mr Jenkins, so I'm assuming that would be how it would run.
Thank you. Is there any further questions? Councillor Arnie.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, has there been any consultation with the Victorian Police with regards to potentially any extra time they may need to spend making sure that people adhere to the 30 kilometres an hour as opposed to 40? Does that make sense? I just wonder, has there been a discussion with them? If there has, will there be more work required by VicPol? Is it just the same? What is their opinion? Will it work, or should we leave it as it is?
I'll ask Acting General Manager Community Mark Jenkins to answer that question.
Thinking through the process, if we do a trial and there will be feedback sought, we'd seek feedback from VicPol in that process. So they would have an opportunity, if they haven't in the past, they will be approached directly, if it's required, to seek their thoughts on the trial, if that was actually successful or not, and any issues they see from an enforcement point of view, for example. Because what we're really talking about is a 10 kilometre an hour reduction. What's existing 40, I think, in the area we're talking about. So,
thank you. I also understand it's a 25% reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Jenkins. Councillor Healy, would you like to begin the debate, please?
Thank you, Councillor Milne. I've been on the CBD task force and travelled all the roads that on the map have been indicated to be reduced to 30. And speaking to people who work in the CBD and travel in the CBD, I've come to the conclusion that I didn't want this to go through without a trial period, but also I see that in my driving of these roads, people are pretty much doing 30 kilometres anyway, and I feel it's much safer. But I also feel that the report was implementing it without any trial period, and I'd like to see a trial period to see the feedback from VicPol, from drivers on the roads, from CBD businesses, our staff who are on the roads, etc., to really be sure it's what we want after a trial period. And then, of course, based on the outcomes of the trial, which is dot point 2, a detailed plan with the feedback and the recommendations would come back to us, and in answer to Councillor Arnie's questions, it would again be up to us to vote it in or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Along the lines of what Councillor Healy was just saying, I use those roads regularly. I shop in the CBD. I pick kids up from bus stops in the CBD. So I'm using the area at all different times of the day when the traffic is, sometimes when it's heavy and sometimes when it's not. And I've been taking notice of how fast I'm driving up there. I'm rarely doing over 30 kilometres an hour up of any of those streets that we're talking about anyway. So from my point of view, the original motion was perfectly acceptable, and the amount of research and community consultation that has gone into this document is really quite commendable to the people who have been putting the document together. So as far as I'm concerned, the evidence is there, the research has been done, and the community's been consulted. So I feel it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to be voting against it due to some sort of popular stories that have been getting around on Facebook and in the media. So, but having said that, I'm more than happy for there to be a trial period. I think there's nothing wrong with having a trial period if it further supports the speed limit, and we can demonstrate that that we've done that work. I'm more than happy for that trial period to go ahead. From what I understand, if we're going to do something where we change the signs and we monitor that, it'll have a strip across the road that just measures how fast people are going along there, so that you don't need to have VicPol or anybody out there with a notebook sort of watching it, I don't think. Would that be correct, Mr. Jenkins?
Yes, I'll ask Mr. Jenkins to answer that, please. Mr. Chair.
If a trial proceeds, we'd have to sort of structure it so all those things were taken into account. So obviously we could put in place permanent monitoring, and we'd probably consult with the police at points in time on their observations, I'd suspect, rather than stand there and watch, maybe. And but I think there probably could be some speed detection things permanently in place at locations to determine speed as part of the trial.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I now wish to speak against this, and I'll make the point that this is about far more than speed limits. If you read through the document, it has access lanes into the mall. It talks about bike lanes. It talks about the railway line being an impediment to the riverfront, and much, much more. If you go to page 29 of the agenda, under implications, there's a heading there, policy. Once adopted, the draft Mildura CBD access and mobility strategy will inform the strategic direction and guide the road and urban design outcomes for the Mildura CBD. Under financial cost, there's no mention of the financial cost. There's no budget. Economic, while it says all economic implications are associated with the draft CBD access and mobility strategy are contained within the final document. There is no real costing at the moment. I've asked that question, and we need to consider that and need to consider what path we're going down. I think there's a number of assumptions being made. These were Melbourne consultants, and on page 39, it mentions a section about pop-up bike lanes, and the information that's based on is lockdowns in Melbourne leaving underutilised expensive infrastructure road pavement. We want something that looks at Mildura. If we look at our roads now, they're not being underutilised. In fact, they're back to normal. And we need to make sure that whatever we do is based on Mildura, not on Melbourne. I believe there's one point that's missed, and nobody's asked the question is, do we want them all? Do we want to keep it? It hasn't been asked as a straight out question. I've got an issue with that. Also, as I've gone through, I found that 65 people have responded. So that's about 0.002% of our population. Previously, I've asked questions where we've had complaints from about 0.002% of the population, and we've deemed that that's acceptable because that's a tiny proportion. So we don't change on 0.002%. I don't think we can make a policy on the input of 0.002%. And there's other issues that I don't believe there's enough evidence. There's no evidence of accidents. Previously, the police have suggested, or the Road Safety Committee, to drop the whole of the CBD down to 50 kilometres an hour, and that was rejected. But now we're going down further. On what evidence? So I've got some major problems with it, but it's not all based on speed. It's about all the other issues that have got and will have major financial implications on the CBD, on the town, and on our ratepayers. And if we're spending huge amounts in the CBD, how do we justify that when we've got a lot of roadwork that needs to be done outside of the CBD? So,
point of order. Can I call a point of order, please, Chair?
That's going to be an interesting exercise, but I'll let you call it. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to sort of, get you to sort of tell me how you made the shift in logic between we've got no budget on here.
I won't accept. That's not a point of order. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. You've had your go at debate. You don't get to question another councillor in their debate, because that's what you're doing. So,
you're introducing...
no, there's no point of order. Thank you. I've finished. I'll now call. Is there anyone else who wants to speak for the motion? Against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Eckel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was quite happy with the original motion, but seeing that you've commented on the whole report, what the question I want to ask is that if I speak against this motion, does that take me out of the proposition of moving the original motion? Because I've spoken to the motion.
No, because that would be a different motion. Back to the original.
Yeah, if this goes, if this is an amended motion.
Yep. So we revert back to the original motion if this motion is defeated.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, from the you brought up a number of points in regards to the consultation, and I've had those issues over the years in regards to numbers and that, but we've got to take that for what it's worth. But the issue is, from all the feedback that I've received personally, and there's been quite a bit, people would be quite adverse at me if I decided to go down to the 30 kilometres, because that was their main gripe, that it would be, if implemented, it would be a revenue-raising exercise, and by the police, for the police, they're not introducing it. And what we've got to do is make it make the CBD as attractive as we possibly can. And Councillor Reynolds quite rightly said that it's difficult to drive 40 kilometres through the CBD. It'd only have to be on a Sunday night or something like that, because so I don't know why it should be changed from that perspective. I think the most important thing, Mr. Chair, I think, is that the attention that it draws to Deakin Avenue, and also raises the issue about Benetook Avenue, about the freight area, and I think that is the number one issue with Mildura, is getting the trucks off Deakin Avenue. I will draw people's attention to page 26 that talks about 7th Street. I really hope that doesn't happen, that we have a recommendation to look at the east side of Deakin Avenue down 7th Street, because I reckon that is the worst corner in the whole of the CBD, is the road that comes up from the wharf to into 7th Street. Something desperately needs to happen with that particular corner, and we don't want to slow the traffic down in that area, because you'd never get out of Madden Avenue, across Madden Avenue. So that was a major impediment for me. I think it's very important that...
You're just about out of time, Councillor Eckel.
Okay, just one more, Mr. Chair. The other point was the prioritised urgent upgrade of Benetook Avenue to become the Mildura Freight Link was the main issue with that I had to make sure that is implemented with the recommendations for this report.
Thank you, Councillor Eckel. Any other councillor wish to speak for or against? Councillor Healy, I'll ask you to close the debate, please.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. So the arguments against my motion, which basically was looking for a way to address some of the concerns, particularly of those against. Councillor Milne talking about 30 kilometres being a permanent change. Councillor Eckel similarly talking about people would be very much against it. The whole aim of this motion is to actually trial it. It's not forever. If it comes back to us in 12 months' time and it hasn't worked, we can vote against it then. When we look at the entire CBD report, I see that it's a really a document that we need to be looking in the future of our city and the future of cities. And so I'm not really going to debate now the actual CBD access and mobility strategy. I know that we are focused on including this amendment to the motion, which is about trialling the 30-kilometre speed limit period for 12 months, and then coming back to this council to make a decision if that's the way we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. I'll put the motion. Those for? Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Could we have the other councillors in, please? Thank you, councillors. Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, an amended motion was passed, and I might ask who's got a copy. Has anyone got a copy of the actual wording? If Councillor Healy can just read the amendments, so the councillors and Mayor and Deputy Mayor understand what has been passed. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Milne. So you've got in your papers the original recommendation, which was approving the strategy and letters regarding upgrades. The draft motion was explaining that I'm happy to move this recommendation with the following additional dot points. That council conduct a trial of 30-kilometre speed limit in existing roadways comprising Langtree Avenue, Lime Avenue, Pine Avenue between 7th and 10th, and 8th Street, 9th Street and 10th Street between Deakin Avenue and Pine Avenue. Dot point 2, based on the outcomes of the trial, prepare a detailed plan for the introduction of reduced speed limits in Mildura CBD for approval by council.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. I'll now move on to item 14.3, Audit and Risk Committee Chairperson's Biannual Report to Council, 1st of July to 31st of December 2021. That Council received the Internal Audit and Risk Committee Chairperson's Biannual Report for the 6-month period, 1st of July to 31st of December 2021. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Modica. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Milne. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Who would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Modica.
I want to highlight the amount of work the Audit and Risk Committee group do, with both Mayor and Deputy Mayor sitting on that. I've just underlined a few of the policies that we've gone through. The conflict of interest policy, the contract management policy, the council expenses policy, the global risk management with Tony McKenzie. It just goes on and on. The review of the cemetery trust that's coming in-house. The management letter, I just really like to point out how much of a wonderful job they do, how important it is, and how regulated we are, and how on top of it we are, most of the time. So it's a great report.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to vote. All in favour? The motion is carried. 14.4, Adoption of Councillor Portfolio Policy. The Council adopt the updated Councillors Portfolio Policy CP028 as presented. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Healy, do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Power, would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. All in favour? The motion is carried. Item 14.5, Advocacy Against Victoria State Government Proposal to Exempt Social Housing from Paying Council Rates. That Council support the Municipal Association of Victoria, MAV, in its advocacy program in relation to the proposal to exempt social housing dwellings from the need to pay rates for local services, and to advocate to all local members of Parliament and relevant ministers in relation to the proposal to exempt social housing dwellings from the need to pay rates for local services. I'd just like to refer to Acting CEO Martin Hawson for report accuracy.
Through you, Mr Mayor, under Section 12, I just wanted to provide some clarity. The report in the agenda for tonight's meeting was compiled prior to Friday the 18th of February, when the state government, which was just last Friday, advised that there was an exemption from paying council rates for social housing will apply to metropolitan councils and 3 of the largest regional cities, i.e. Bendigo, Ballarat and Geelong. Mildura is the 5th largest city, so managed to escape the exemption managed to escape that criteria. So basically this will not apply, the exemption won't apply to Mildura Rural City Council, which is a good result. However, the recommendation in the report is still current from a policy perspective and remains unchanged. However, this will not, I just wanted to make it clear for the minutes and to update the report that this does not apply for the Mildura Rural City Council.
Councillor Milne.
Mr Mayor, there's also an issue of a $20,000 per subdivision tax on new developments to go to social housing, which is all part of this. Is there any update? I know the government withdrew one of the taxes. I saw it in the front of the Age today, and I haven't had time to read it. Is there any update on that anyone is aware of?
I'll pass that on to Acting CEO Martin Hawson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, in addition, the Social and Affordable Housing Contribution Levy, which I think is what you're referring, will also be imposed on the same council, so not Mildura Rural City Council.
Yeah, but we're the next council off the rank.
And that's why we're still advocating. Do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Milne. A seconder, Councillor Reynolds. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? I'd just like to quickly say I think it's really important that we do support our fellow municipalities, because as Councillor Milne says, if we keep growing like we are, we will be next. So it's important to stick together, as we say. Councillor Milne?
I'll make a short comment, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. I think it is really important because while the intentions might be good of providing housing for people that need it or cheaper housing, the workings of what's being proposed has got the potential to drive the cost of housing up, which is really defeating that. And we need moves to drive housing down. Yeah, there is a big need for people to have social housing. So I think some more work needs to be done that we need to be involved in the first instance. And hopefully the government will move to come up with something better that does achieve that goal, because the goal is great. It's just the workings aren't so good.
Yes, we want to get people out of that realm. So, Councillor Monica?
Yeah, I'm on my local government assistance kick again today. The MAV, Social Housing and Funding for Council Services issue paper is about 15 pages, but the summary at the end, I'll just read the top bit, which is actually quite phenomenal. Exempting tens of thousands of Victorian government-owned dwellings from the need to pay rates for local services provided to their tenants by councils is a major and concerning development. The impact of over 136.8 million annual statewide reduction in revenue will seriously impact local services and infrastructure, and it will require higher rates on a smaller portion of people, so it will affect people directly. The other thing I'll say is that the state and federal governments collect 260 taxes where we collect one, the rates. So, it's that document's there, it's worth reading. I can share that too, but it is a concern. Thank you for letting me make a comment, Mayor Wood.
Thank you. Councillor Ackle?
Mr. Mayor, you've made a comment that I agree with, and I see this as a red flag for us. If this goes through, and it looks as though it will. And the other issue too that I have real concern with is that they keep on putting the boot into developers. It's developers that grow this country, and apparently what I've read by it was 1.75% rate on the market value of a new housing development will be placed on the developer on each. So that's the issue that I have. Find another way of raising the taxes, but don't put the boot into our developing industry, who, like a lot of them, don't even have money in the bank. Like they go out and borrow, and they've got assets, and that's the only way we're going to grow our country. The same as our developers that we have here. We've got to encourage our developers and do everything that we possibly can. So I think sending a message to the Victorian State Government also sends a message to that leave the development industry alone.
Thank you, Councillor Ackle. We'll now put the motion to vote. All in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 14.6, adoption of request for free waste services policy CP 060. Councillors, on request of the acting CEO, this item has been withdrawn from business. Item 14.7, adoption of S11A instrument of appointment and authorisation. The council adopt the S11A instrument of appointment and authorisation document as present for Ben Ferguson, Enforcement Officer. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Monica. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Milne. I thought it would have been the triangle. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. All in favour? The motion is carried. Item 15, urgent business, and there is no urgent business tonight. Item 16, community questions, and we have 3 questions from community. And I believe, yes, acting CEO, no, with General Manager Corporate, no, General Manager of Development, sorry. We'll get there, Mandy Whelan. You're answering asking and answering the questions. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mayor. There are 3 questions. They're a bit lengthy, so bear with me. So question 1 is from Brett Woods, which is the property owners and residents of the Mildura Marina are extremely concerned that the planned landscaping of the Marina precinct still remains uncompleted more than 2 years after our last community meeting with Council. As was discussed at this meeting, the Marina is a significant community asset that is used daily by other Mildura residents, not just those living in the Marina, and is used by many tourists as well. It is also a significant landmark for Mildura due to its visual prominence, particularly for tourists entering and exiting Mildura via the George Chaffey Bridge. We were told years ago that funds were allocated to cover the entire project, including the rocking of the marina wall, the tiering of the bridge abutments, and the rest of the landscaping. On top of that, we know that the council is also being reimbursed a considerable portion of the rocking costs by the marina owners. Now we are being told that somehow there are not enough funds left to complete the project. We are requesting that the remaining funds required to be allocated from the budget ASAP to avoid further delays, and would like to know when this can occur and the project be completed once and for all. So over the last couple, this is the response now, over the last couple of years, council has taken over ownership of the previously privately owned land between the Marina Basin, the water, and the public footpath thoroughfare that runs around the Marina site. The project that follows was to establish a rock embankment and landscaping around this to not only improve the appearance of the sloped area of the marina, but also to stabilise and protect the embankment. That project has been completed. Its scope included the rock embankment, irrigation, relocation of underground services and plantings. The relatively small balance of funds will be used to complete the landscaping along the northern path once the retaining wall is completed by the developer. There is no point putting plants in at the moment in that area if machinery and equipment are needed to access the location to build the necessary infrastructure, and council staff are currently in discussion with the landowner to establish when that will be completed, and then we can do the plantings. Future projects such as the bridge abutments have been designed but not yet approved, and it's not correct that they are actually budgeted for and approved in the first place. That is still to happen, and that's the tiering around the bridge abutments. The reimbursement from the marina owners is being paid to council as part of transferring their privately owned land into a public asset that we maintained and renewed by council. The contribution is significantly less than half the cost of the rock wall, and associated landscaping does not contribute to any future projects in the marina. The balance of this initial project is being funded by rates. Any future works in the marina site will also be rate funded. So future projects will be considered as part of council's capital works program on a priority basis. Question 2 is also from Brett Woods, and that question is, during the summer months, there has regularly been groups of youths jumping from the Red Bridge within the marina into the Marina Basin. These youths have also vandalised the council signage on the bridge and have on occasion been seen throwing some of the landscaping rocks into the basin. They have also been witnessed jumping into the water from the bridge as boats pass underneath, not only risking their own lives, but also the lives of others. The police have been notified on several occasions, however, have not had a not causing any trouble attitude. They have had a not causing any trouble attitude and have done nothing about it. Residents have also approached them but have been threatened with violence. I believe the warning signs on the bridge mention fines by the council for breaches. Could the council monitor the area more frequently during summer and issue those fines to deter this behaviour? Or could a contact number be given to residents and business owners in the marina so that someone from the council could be summoned when such activities have been witnessed? Alternatively, perhaps the council could raise the issue with the local police and encourage them to be more proactive in preventing this sort of behaviour. So the response to that question is that council can monitor the area more frequently in the summer months and involve VicPol where necessary. Residents can call the General Council number to report the activity, and this would be passed on to the appropriate officers immediately, who can then attend. And the final question is from Russell Sparks, and that question is, I'm writing in regards to the heavy rain and flooding on the 27th of January 2022. My property is situated at 609 17th Street. The rain on the day caused flooding in and around my property. My question is, what caused the drainage and pump system at 17th and Deakin Avenue to fail again on that date? So the response to that question is, on the night of the storm, the pump lost power, and when the power resumed, the pump actually blew a pipe apart. The large rain event caused overflow from the stormwater basin when the system was out of action, and it's actually designed to deliver the stormwater to the drainage system downstream. So obviously that wasn't happening. So council arranged a temporary portable pump the next day to drain the volume of stormwater. However, this took a few days to actually remove the whole amount. The existing pump is scheduled to be replaced with a new flange connection for quick temporary pump connection if a failure does occur in the future. And these works are scheduled to be completed in March 2022.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 17, confidential business. And we have one item of confidential business to deal with tonight. As noted in the agenda, this is 17.1 tender award Murrayville Recreation Reserve Community Complex and change rooms. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Pieri, do I have a seconder? Councillor Milne. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll now put the motion to vote. The motion is carried.